It started with S, and I was concerned. So I said, son, now where'd you learn to
Opinions
talk?
and statements made by the host and participants in this program are not those of the owners, advertisers, and management company of Sugar City FM 90.3. Nor are such statements necessarily supported or endorsed by the owners, managers, or advertisers of this station. While we encourage all to share their opinions, we do not support any comments that may slander, discriminate, or otherwise offend anyone, and we insist that you refrain from any such statements.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear Nor Favor.
Where is the cancer Pandora come out for war?
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmsankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear Nor Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Good evening and welcome to Fear Nor Favor. And we are going to discuss quite a number of issues. First one we'd like to look at is the reduction in interest rates of students' loan at our development bank. Now, some persons might not be too keen on hearing that if they're not into business, or if they're not conducting business with that particular institution. But I can say that a reduction to 5% is quite appreciable, because I would have had student loans there stretching as far back as when I first started to study, when I first did chemistry. And the interest rate was a very high interest rate. As a matter of fact, I had an existing student loan repayment making, and then I went and tried to purchase a home, and I consolidated both the student loan with the loan for the acquisition of the house. Now, all that was at 11%. And I have been screaming for some attention with respect to adjustments for quite a number of years. And it seemed to have been falling on deaf ears. And even when the rate was decreased to 6%, I never had the opportunity to benefit from that decreased rate. And it was rather unfortunate, because to operate at 11%, some persons just don't have a clue about the financial pressure operating at 11% loan. To give you an idea, come payday this March, maybe next week, I would have repaid $202,000 to the development bank to service that particular loan, consolidated loan. And not 1 cent would have gone to the principal. You could imagine that? Not even a cent would have gone to the principal. Whatever the principal was, it is still is. It is still the same thing. And it was rather unfortunate. But luckily, the authorities realized, come on, a man would have paid back $202,000 by next payday, next week, and not a single cent would have gone to his principal. So they are making adjustments, and they're trying their best to bring down that 11% as much as possible to provide relief. Because imagine $202,000 we paid on a loan and you ain't touched the interest yet. That is harsh for students, for people who had students' loan. That principle seems as if it's just not moving. And I think it was wisdom and compassion that Dr. Joe would have instructed the subordinates to make an effort to bring about relief. I heard him on, I think it was Freedom, could have been yesterday, when he said that, you have to imagine whether going off to study is punishment, because you come back and you're trying to achieve certain things to assume a particular status that I would have gone to study for betterment. And some persons are definitely worse off in terms of financial comfort than when they're prior to leaving to go and study. It is not easy. You make a sacrifice because you want to elevate yourself academically. But then the financial issues when you come back, because you don't want to drive a vehicle, produce more flexibility in getting around. You might want to have a home to call yours. You don't want to stay home with your parents at that age. You might want to dress a certain way. You might want to even continue advancing your studies. But most people get trapped with their first degree because of student loans repayment. Many persons would have liked to gone on to do maybe a master's or even horizontally do a bachelor's in a different area of studies. Because sometimes you do your first degree and you do not have the scope for application. Or they might just have a few vacancies around in the entire federation. And thus you might end up unemployed. Some people pay you for your degree if your degree is directly applicable to your work. Some people would pay you for a degree, whether or not the degree is directly applicable. The reason they might do this is because having gone out there to study, your brain would have developed considerably. So it's like you have somebody with a chemistry degree. It is expected that they might be able to better reason an economic problem, an accounting problem, a history problem, because you're so much open up with respect to the exposure that your brain would have gotten. And it's like the cave analogy, where somebody stays in a cave until they're 25 and somebody outside the cave up to the age, similar age, 25. The one who came out the cage and got exposed to academic development and other experiences would more likely to be a better asset to the environment than one who just did not get the exposure. And some people feel like going to, I heard the UVI doing a campaign to get persons at CFBC and the college over in Sixtham College over in Nevis to get students, because it is close to home. It is very much like home. You go down there, you meet your family members who have migrated some years back. And there are persons who attended UWI. There are persons who would have attended UWI and feel like UWI is it. So they try to bring about a comparison between those who would have studied at UWI and those who would have studied maybe at UVI or even Cuba. But that is not a fair analysis. You have some persons, they're given the opportunity and they would have grabbed it with both hands. Persons who would have studied maybe the same subject in UWI, subject area. Something that just cannot match the person who would have studied in UVI. And I'll tell you why. I look at the same chemistry. When you go to study chemistry in UWI, 99% of your studies might be centered around your chemistry. When you study chemistry at UVI, you have to do philosophy, you have to do English, you have to do history, you have to do so many things other than chemistry. But when you do your core chemistry, you have to have a doctorate in order to deliver the chemistry content from the syllabus. You do inorganic chemistry, it is a person with a doctorate in inorganic chemistry. You do organic chemistry, the same thing. You do quantitative analysis, the person have to have a doctorate in that. You do qualitative analysis, the person got to have a doctorate in that. You do biochemistry, the person have to have a doctorate in that. And instrumental chemistry, the person have to have a doctorate. So you come back and you stand up beside the person who might have studied at UWI. And something is hardly any comparison, simply because when you study something like chemistry at UVI, the kind of instrumental analysis that you go through, the kind of practical that you go through, most persons who come back home with a chemistry degree from UWI, they're not more practical than the person who came back from UVI. You can run different type of spectroscopy. You can analyze stuff. You might look at wavelengths and you see, well, this is supposed to be at a particular wavelength, but it's not there. Maybe the UWI graduate will just tell you, well, this particular substance is not present because it's not at the said wavelength. But the UVI student will say to you, yes, there might be contamination, maybe of a chlorine radical. So as a result of the contamination, the wavelength would have been shifted maybe two or three upward or 2 or 3 to the left. You know, those are fine things that you can do. And anybody trying to go to UVI and feel that they would be inferior to persons who studied at UWI, don't let them fool you. You can stand up and be a better graduate in chemistry. I could talk to that because I graduated with chemistry than any UWI graduate. And I could say no, that anybody who graduated from UWI with a chemistry graduate, and we stand to the board and we try to teach or we try to analyze, we go to a lab and when we test and everything, they wouldn't have anything over me. As a matter of fact, I might have to use a microscope to see them way back behind. We have to promote UVI and get people going there. It is cheaper to travel. And the impartation of knowledge is extremely proficient. You have very proficient professors. And don't forget, when you do your chemistry, you have to do your mathematics. You have to do your A-level mathematics. And then that's mathematics 141, 142, that's a whole year. Then you have to do your calculus 241, 242. Then you have to do your intermediate calculus, 341, 342. Then you have to do your advanced calculus, 441, 442. And then you have to do a whole range. That is why when you graduate with a chemistry degree, you would have done so much mathematics. That is almost as if you have a degree in mathematics as well. I can recall that all I needed to get a math degree after I completed my chemistry degree was 1 credit. And that 1 credit, it was comprised in such a way that it was difficult to get a 1 credit done because you had to make a presentation and they only allow you to do 1 presentation per semester. So that means to do the 1 credit, you get a half a credit for the first presentation in 1 semester, and in the following semester, you do a follow-up presentation for the other half. So you had to spend a whole year. You would have to spend a whole year, and when you're out there on your own on a student loan, you don't want to spend an extra year just to say, well, you have a math degree. Because if somebody has a math degree and I do not have a math degree but just 1 credit, I wasn't going to waste time to say I have a math degree by sticking around for an extra year. That's a lot of money you'll have to spend. And you'll have to find other credits because you have to be full-time. As a foreign student, you have to be full-time. And I can recall I had to make up some time there, coming on to the end by taking a few law courses. A long time I have a deep love for math. So when people trying to compare where you study and where they study, you got to get down to the nucleus of it and see what was involved. Do not let anybody feel that because they study at UWI, they have anything over you who did not. That is an awful comparison. And persons who studied at UWI at time want to be pompous and sort of distinguish themselves from persons who studied elsewhere. And that is not the case. It is not the case at all. And if they want to talk about accomplishment by UWI, you have persons who can represent and represent well. So that's sort of ism that they have around here in particular, trying to be distinguishable from persons who did not study UWI. That would have to stop. That would have to stop, and stop quickly. Not that the government would not pay you for your degree regardless of where you study. Maybe some persons who study in Cuba might get a little more headache than persons who did not study in Cuba. And likewise, some of them will want to extend it to UVI graduates. So we have to get rid of that nonsense. Oh, my degree from UWI, my degree from that. Come on. I have qualifications from UWI as well. UVI, Walden University in the States, Cal Southern University, and I also have a law degree from London. So I would have studied, so to speak, around the world. So nobody gonna pull any shots on me. I could speak for myself. UWI, qualification. UVI, qualification, that's in the U.S. Walden University in the U.S. Cal Southern University in the U.S. and London University up in London. So we got it done with this sort of distinction. So I started out by saying we really welcome the reduction in rates of interest at the development bank, that where most persons will get their student loans. And I want the government to continue to assist students. It is great that they're reducing, but I think sometimes to a certain degree of debt forgiveness student loan debt forgiveness could also be a complementary aspect, because you have persons who would have gotten scholarships, went away on study leave with pay, and they are bonded for 3 or 4 years when they come back. Some of them don't even come back. They come back, they can't wait for the 3 or 4 years to be up, and then they disappear to foreign lands. They migrate. So they just sneak back in the 3 years or 4 years. Then you have persons who did not get any scholarship. They took students loan, and they stay here for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Some of them never go anywhere again. And I think this is when some sort of consideration should be given. Should be given. You work so many years with government despite the fact that you did not get a scholarship but had a student loan instead. The mere fact that you could put in so many years and not be given a little student loan debt forgiveness, reduce it 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%. Because look at those who got scholarship and got 4/5 of their salary while they were studying. They come back and they hustle out. Like they want to wake up tomorrow and the 4-year bond is up. They can't wait for that. And those who did not get, making a concerted effort to stay here and contribute to the thinking tank of our federation. This should be compensated or rewarded in some way. Just relieve them of certain pressures. Once you make up your mind, you're done study, you come back, you contributing to the country. And I think that those are considerations that administrations will have to take on board. You might be shocked that some people just do not go away to study because they watch how persons who went away to study seem to be suffering a little bit more than those who haven't been anywhere. The net disposable income is way below what it used to be prior to going off. Some people might say, well, people might want to live above their income. But you cannot tell somebody who made sacrifices to go and better themselves so that they can better contribute to their country that they're living above their income. So you're living in a 2-bedroom house and everything, furnished, everything. And because you went to study and you have these financial obligations, you must move from a 2-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom house. You know, and you have a family to build. You might need a child or maybe 2 children. And you want to be able to provide cushion for the upbringing of those children. Because the job of any parent is to live life along a gradient. And then, when they compare the gradient, which the life gradient that the children will have to go through, it will have to be less steep. If your life gradient had a particular slope or steepness, and you children come along, and that steepness is increased, you would have failed considerably as a parent. Your job is to make that slope, that gradient, less steep for your children. And likewise, your children are supposed to make it less steep for their children. So by the time your great-grandchildren would come along, it's almost like a horizontal line, 0 gradient. That is the purpose why we live. People would have to start advancing themselves academically. You can never be complacent with whatever academic achievement you would have had. Something you have to go along with the tides. You did studies in area X, but you cannot get it applied. There might not be sufficient scope for application. So you move across horizontally and you do something that you can be more productive from a practical perspective. It doesn't make sense to get a degree in this and you're not contributing. It doesn't make sense. You might not be able to go upward, but the real deal for anybody who would have studied is to go from an associate degree or maybe even O-level to A-level, from A-level to associate, from associate to a bachelor, from a bachelor's to a master's, from a master's to a doctorate. Those are persons who are ambitious and want to learn and learn and learn and learn. I never fed up of learning, but there's a cost associated with it. There's a cost associated with it. I mean, I would have completed things at the bachelor's level, the master's level, and now completing things at the doctoral level. My ambition was to reach the highest level of education I can get, which is an eventual doctorate. I can't tell a lot of people what to do, but that was my intention. And something, even though you might have done a little science at the bachelor's level, and you want to go on and do a master's, you can still go across horizontally. I went from chemistry to law to forensic psychology and now to clinical psychology. And if I really had the funding and everything else, I would have liked to cap all of that with some forensic accounting. A lot of red flags that can be raised, and forensic accountants would have the role to play along those lines. So once again, I would like to say a big thank you on behalf of everybody who would have had student loans for the intention and the eventual materialization of the interest on student loans to be reduced drastically to 5%. So thanks much on behalf of all persons who would have had students' loan. Now, we want to look at fights in schools. I think for years, we have been struggling as to how to deal with students who bully other people's children while at school. And the reality is that, from a practical perspective, a fight would never be completed, a fight never done. Nobody wins a war. But we have to make up our mind. When would we compromise and say, well, call it quit, done. Do not let it be any continuation of this nonsense. Some schools try their utmost best, and others do not want the image of the school or the institution to be messed up. So things that happen that's supposed to be handed over to the police, they try to avoid all that. And they've been doing this for so long that things get out of control. Things get out of control. I happened to have a conversation with a teacher from a particular school last night after I completed some accounts classes with him. And he would have indicated that the school compound is technically divided into two, east and west, a school compound. So sometimes students who belong on the eastern side of the school compound cannot go on the western side of the school compound. That would suggest to me that these people, these students, are missing classes. Because if you cannot go over in the east when your classes are being held in the east, then you have to miss those classes. And the security system at the schools, that is a complete joke. Because once that was happening, it should have been nipped in the bud as early as possible. How could you have a school compound distinctly divided into an east zone and a west zone? And these cannot go over there, and likewise those cannot go over here or come over here. That can't make sense for a learning environment. We have to sort out that. And the sorting out would involve dishing out penalties that would nip things in the bud early. And those that would have festered, put the matter where it's supposed to go. Put the matter where it's supposed to go. The parents should be made to suffer some consequences, because these are the products that you are putting out there. Your children coming from home, we're not talking about those who pass 18 and those other stuff and practically on their own him that they're under your roofing. You have those who are in primary school, secondary school, creating havoc inside of the people's schools. And to make matters worse, they would have their friends who would have, stopped from school, because some of them ain't even finished. They just stop. There were no returns on the investment while going to school. And they create more problems for schools and people, children, than anything else. You have some who just totally torment school children in certain areas in St. Kitts. And that must be put to an end. It cannot be put to an end when you're not taking harsh actions and making the decisions to punish people. When traumatize the whole school, you can't rely. You can't call the police and the police telling you about security. Security what? These people will bang hell out of the security guards because the boy is coming up. I believe there should be a very strong law that as long as you're not wearing school uniform and you have any business to do with that school, you make a report to the office of the school and you facilitate whatever inquiry you're trying to make. As long as you're loitering around the school, that should be a no-no, and they should take you into custody and deal with you. School compound should be off for anybody who not attending the school. And if you want to be on the school compound, you get a note, you get permission. You must call the school if you have an emergency. Well, the emergency would manifest itself. But you can't have people going on bike climbing around and walking away. And some of them even getting paid from taxpayers' money to go and create problems at our school because they're not showing up to work when they should be working. They're not showing up to work. They want to start work 7 o'clock and finish before 7. And when I mean the same 7, not 7 in the evening. That culture would have to stop. We are fostering a dangerous part of our society. How can you, a learning institution, and they have persons intimidated so badly that even the females, even though they don't want to have any conversation with them, they're paranoid about what would happen if they don't give in to them and their conversations. Man, stop let these people traumatize our children. We should have persons out in numbers. We have a lot of defense force people up there. After all, we ain't fighting any war. They're available to assist. And even though somebody might like to say that it's policing, well, the defense force will have to police. If you send one police officer with about 3 or 4 of them, bring back the control. Somebody might say, look too military-like. But you have to do what you have to do. When you let it spiral out of control further, what kind of interest could you have in the schools? We have to draw closer to our schools unless we're going to be in problems in the very near future. You're not paying the school sufficient attention. And the school authorities would have to start turning over things to the police. Let people get arrested. Let them get bailed. Let them go down to see the magistrates, whichever court you want to put them in. Let them go down to see the magistrates. Let the magistrate decide what is the best way forward with these people. Him give them suspended sentences and say to keep the peace within another 3, 4, 5 years. Not in 6 months. Unless we would not be able to tackle that dangerous aspect of our school environment. We're suspending people from school often, and they're going home to nobody. They're going home to smoke their weed, plant nonsense. They must find a substitute for suspension. You have a library. You tell somebody, look, you see the history book, you're doing history, go make notes out of chapter 1. From start to finish, check out the sum and substance out of chapter 1. You're doing accounts, do a few problems. You're doing the first 6 chapters, you balance off some to your accounts, you open a child balance. From the child balance, you open trading and profit and loss account, the balance sheet. Do something, keep them around and let them do something. Sending them home, nobody home. And maybe, and a matter of fact, some of them that deliberately misbehave to be suspended. And our child has been suspended over 20 times between September and today. But what is that child going home to do? What? You pass a rule, anybody found loitering on the corridors would be suspended. But if this person done in a slow class, what is suspension supposed to do? And we need to have teachers with a little bit more faith. We need to have a teacher or to take in turn in what you could call a suspension alternative center. Instead of they're going home, they do what they're supposed to do. And these magistrates too, they have to come up with the times. You have some fellas who would have dropped out and girls who would have dropped out of school, had absolutely no academic achievement coming before the court. You can summon them, give them a suspended sentence and instruct them to get at least 3 or 4 O-level, 6. You're going to say, well, who going to monitor this, who going to monitor that? That is how we create jobs for people. We create jobs for people like that. We can't continue with what we have going on and create jobs. It cannot go that way. Because what you'll be doing, because you're not creating jobs, you'll have to dismiss, terminate, send home on vacation, somebody is doing it. Then you end up paying 2 set of people for doing the same thing. They have many ways that we can be more creative and create jobs, increase jobs in numbers. That person wouldn't be disgruntled because they were terminated, dismissed, or forced to go on vacation. Those would have the instances when things like that might have to happen. If somebody is performing contrary to the goals of a department, then you have to do what you have to do. That could be considered misconduct. You write, you warn, you do this, you do that. And repetition of something that you warned before could be considered gross misconduct. So let the court system help us. Instruct people to go and do several subjects or learn a skill. Make a record. And have good record, because our problem with us here is lack of proper record keeping. X was instructed to have a suspended sentence for 3 years, and over that 3-year period, supposed to get at least 5 O levels. Somebody was suspended, a suspended sentence for 2 years. Within that 2 years, is supposed to get at least 3 or 4 subjects. Or develop a skill that can be evaluated by an expert in that area to say, well, you have the skill set to be employed somewhere, having received that certificate. We need to build our society. If you want to punish people in a positive way, that maybe even half of the realize that is not punishment because they're doing something that can benefit them. You know how nice it is when you punish somebody in a way that will eventually benefit them or even half benefit them. They won't see it as punishment. And then they will realize that this is a good way to go. And they'll come back and maybe thank the person who implemented or stipulated those conditions on them. We have to start looking at our people. You have to have people going around. Just like when they got election coming up, people going from house to house and finding out certain things. We go from house to house. How many persons living there? What qualifications they have? Do they have subjects? Do they have certificate in anything? What skills do they have? And you make your copious notes. And then you must go back or invite that person somewhere to see what you can do. Just imagine election is every year. Call that an election. And then you see who you could help. We have to make that kind of approach. And once we do that, our country would improve tremendously. You wouldn't have farmers, for example. I mean, I see this thing going on the market. Everybody selling potatoes beside each other. I heard Mr. Mark Vantley mentioning that people must learn to do things together. He made a reference of some man, when he went down to some funeral, was talking to him and said this person had a pier and this person had a boat. And the person who had the pier trying to get a boat and the person who has the boat trying to get a pier. And he said it was a simple, it could have been a common denominator. That working together, that's the common denominator. So that the person got the pier now could facilitate the boat, and the person who has the boat could provide some means of revenue or working togetherness with the person with the pier. You know, you don't have to be husband and wife to work together. You could have an association. If I can sell here and you're going to sell 25 meters away from me, you're selling soup, some nice mutton soup, your pumpkin mashware and everything else, and you got your provision, nice, lovely soup. Somebody can pull beside you cooking the same soup. Somebody pull beside you cooking some nice pie and rice and potato scallop, that scalloped potato. You know, do something. Do your investigation. What is this person offering? What is that person offering? How can we provide a service to persons who would come to that area? And everybody would go home happy. Not people making enemies out of each other because they're selling the same thing. Not persons having to badmouth other persons in order to compete effectively. Because it's no use you pulling in $200 a day, the other person pulling in $200 a day. And then all of a sudden, twice on him say hello to each other. You might be selling your soup and drinks, the person selling the rice and cook up and everything and drinks, and the person who's selling the soup and drink might say, well, I did not need so much drink because soup is something that you basically consume in a kind of drinking fashion. And if you who selling this soup underestimated how much drinks you would have need, you're supposed to be able to go over to the person adjacent to you and say, look, I ran out of drinks. I need at least a 12, 13 vitamin, giant malt thing, a combination thereof. And you're supposed to happily give that person. You're not giving it away now. You're providing the person with the opportunity of satisfying that particular utility of the customer at that time, but you're getting paid. Some people, even though you're buying it from them, they don't want to do it because they see it as competition. You're getting it sold. You have an abundance over there to do your cook-up and your macaroni pies, scalloped potato, and I have a shortage over here. And let's work together. We need a lot more of that. And things would be better. Not everybody selling the same thing shoulder to shoulder. And lead to enmity and lead to disgruntled people. And then you have to take out measurements, measure this. My thing's supposed to be 3 feet. Your thing's supposed to be 4 feet 2 inches. Your thing is 4 feet 4 inches. So you take up 2 inches of my... All those are the silly stuff. As simple as that. That adjustment of working together can go a pretty long way. Let us take a break.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is the cancer Pandora come out for war?
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSaintKitts.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM. Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is the cancer Pandora come out for war?
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSaintKitts.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles...
Welcome back to Fear No Favor. Now, I want to look a little bit at policing and our court system. Now, we have some accidents taking place on our roads. It is not every accident would happen where the traffic department in Bastille would have to respond or have the obligation to respond. It might happen at a particular outstation area, district, a different district to what the traffic department district is in. Now, for example, something may have happened in Molyneux. And of course, Tabernacle would go to investigate. But you may have persons in the Tabernacle area who might have been summoned to the site of the accident, but have very poor investigative skills. That should be no reason why a proper investigating officer cannot assist that person in Tabernacle to put an accident report together. It should not be. You have the strength at the nucleus, you have weak ones and the periphery. When accidents happen, and the weaker ones and the periphery would have to go and investigate, of course they would come up short. Some might bring up some good quality traffic reports. But you cannot have a child being knocked down by a careless driver in Molyneux. You cannot have that. And a person, a police officer, comes up from Tabernacle to investigate. The parents of the child go to the traffic department asking for this report. Many times, 20-something times. And you're being told that the matter is being investigated. Maybe they might have seen you as a nuisance, but you want the matter to be investigated and go to trial. You carelessly knocked down a school child on the spur at the moment when school was being dismissed. Careless driving. The police officer attends, took a statement from the defendant, the first defendant. Up to now, that investigating officer has not taken any statement from neither the mother of the child nor the father of the child, who were both at the scene of the accident. But because the child was knocked down and they were fearful that there might be internal bleeding, they took up the child and took it to the Molyneux Hospital, where they were instructed that the child would have to go to Bastille. You keep on asking for the police report. The child's foot was in cast. Up to today, this child still cries for the pain experienced in both feet from the accident. And the child hit his head too because he was tossed, licked in front. You can see the pictures from at the hospital with the area where he got injured. Ankle, this, that, head, elbow. And you want to tell me that the same information that police took on the very first day when she attended the scene is the only bit of information. It's still on the police report up to today. The same information. No statement from the mother nor father. Not even the insurance that the person who knocked down the child. No. On the insurance section of the report, there's nothing, zero, zap. How you could knock down a child and the investigating officer ain't even try to find out whether or not that vehicle was insured. And to make matters worse, you go there almost every other day to find out if the report, the investigation was completed and the report put together. Eventually, when you look at the report, it is the same information on the paper from day one. How could that be? Things will be statute by after a particular period of time, meaning that you can no longer take it to court. There's a criminal aspect when you have a traffic accident and people just don't understand that. How could you let the time elapse and up to now that careless driver was not taken to the magistrate court to answer to the charge of driving without jockey and attention in a school zone? Children, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. How that could have happened? Why the police allowed that to happen? Why that person wasn't taken before the magistrate court when a child was knocked down? That's carelessness. That's poor policing. Poor policing. At least let a matter go to the criminal court. Now you have to be fighting a civil matter. You fight a civil matter, but the results from the criminal matter would reinforce the effort in the civil matter. And I believe too, it's supposed to be very unethical, and I'm going to ask a question of the Bar Association. And I'm going to write off to the office in St. Lucia, where the Chief Justice's office and her workers are, to ask a question. Whether or not it is unethical for a lawyer to combine with a defendant and manufacture information to say you're producing a defense when a child was knocked down. Can't be. There's no compassion. And it is outright fabricated and manufactured. Because if that driver going to say, well, the very next day, I went by the home of the child that got knocked down to investigate and find out from the mother how the child was doing. And the mother came out and called the child to the door. And the child came with just a little limp. But that was a physical impossibility, because from the time the child was knocked down and taken to the hospital and the cast went on the child's foot, the child spent a considerable period of time in town. So the child was not in Molineux for that person to see any child. And I don't know how the child would have come to the door with very little effort. And the child was just 3 years old and a little over and foot in cast. What 3-year-old child could manage a cast on his foot and come to door? So the lie is just constructed. And a question would have to be asked. How unethical it is for a defense lawyer to assist a defendant in fabricating stories, especially when the life of a young child was involved. And now the livelihood of the child going forward is being messed up. It's being messed up. And you couldn't care because you wanted to pull in a penny. If the person had insurance and go to report the matter to the insurance, I doubt if they reported any matter, because no insurance, anything is on the paper. And I think that certain things must not be statute bar. And something like that should be investigated. And maybe action should be taken against the government for the slackness and the lapse of the police officer, who had nothing more than what she took at the very same day that the accident happened. We have people who want to go into policing. They're working outstation. And they cannot put a report together. So when you putting them in the outstation to hide them in the bushes? Competent people supposed to go in the outstation. The outstation is supposed to represent persons proficient at policing, not marginal persons who could barely perform. Subject-verb agreement, horrible. No effort, no investigative skills. And they're working outstation. Outstation is supposed to be a subset of our main station in Bastia. So how could you not send competent people to work in outstations? And the beauty about it, sometimes when you're coming up for promotion, they're asking if you worked in an outstation before and you really do what you're supposed to do, the duties and everything else, and you got that experience. Well, if that is a criteria to give persons promotion at the higher level, obviously it is saying that persons you're sending at outstation should have some level of competency. Not that you can't even put a report together. Not that you ain't even take a statement from either parent who were on the scene of the accident. Even if the child had to be taken to the hospital, you find them. Not all information from an investigation can be had on the same day at the site. You have what you call collateral evidence as well. Not even a statement from anybody, because parents were down there, school had just over. Not even a statement to provide collateral evidence to ensure that this person would have been prosecuted. So you have to ask whether or not there was collusion between the police officer and the person who was charged. Because if you made sure that you did nothing else, the only thing that you can inference, one of the inferences that you can draw, is that there was collusion between the investigating officer and the person who drove the vehicle carelessly. How that thing did not reach in the court. And I think a conversation would have to be had with the Attorney General. That is real slackness. Real slackness. Sometimes you have people going to make complaint to outstations, and they feel where they don't work sufficient for the day, they ain't taking on that. Come back and see me tomorrow. Do this, do that. And then things spiral out of control. Like the incident we had in Sandy Point where the guy got killed. Report after report after report. People want to sit back because they see the outstation as a place where you stay on your phone, you play games, you message people all day, you listen songs. And you don't have to respond in a timely manner to complaints that were made. You see it as an opportunity to lime. You can't lime. I don't even think outstations should close down at a particular time. Because you're closing down at a time when people really misbehave. My dad used to be in charge of an area. We used to live in the Tabernacle Station house. The police station used to lock down, I think it was around 10 o'clock. And I was really discombobulated as to why a police station would be locked down. Things happen throughout the day. So something major happened. And those hours between 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning, or 5 o'clock, whenever they used to reopen, that would have to be placed on hold. You know how many things could happen in 5 minutes? Much less 5 hours. I think this policy of closing down these outstations should never be. Never. Cannot be right. People must be available to get police protection throughout the entire day. Already sometimes when you call, they can't respond because the vehicle, all that is okay. But don't tell me you're closing down the outstation. That can't make sense. We have sufficient people in management to say, well, this going to be that, that going to be that, that going to be that. To make sure you have somebody who will be actively involved in what might transpire during those hours. And we have to work towards that. We have to work towards that. I can recall even at the hospitals, whether Molyneux, Sandy Point, people who are working must be wide awake. You put a child on an asthma machine And of course, you'll tell them, wait a while and come back here. Only to find out at the time you're waiting was a protracted period of time. For you to be concerned about your child and you go behind. And the same person you're waiting on to allow you to come back to put the child on the nebulizer fast asleep. So if you don't use the initiative, you'll be forgotten. You'll be forgotten. And then you just have to get up, use your wisdom, and try to see what's going on. It's supposed to be a half an hour break, a 20 minutes break, whatever. Because these people are human too. So sometimes we have to check. Some people get vexed when you try to check. But nothing wrong if you have a system of check and balances. You're waiting for the doctor, you didn't see the doctor for a long time, you didn't see the nurse. You have to go somewhere. And then we have this situation where doctors are on call. Well, this is a big, big problem. You buy a hospital, not Bassey Hospital, and a doctor is on call. I don't know what the on call is supposed to mean. Because we have sufficient doctors, so the doctor could be stationed at the hospital and they could run a shift and all. You can't tell me a doctor on call in Sandy Point or Molyneux. And when you go there, the nurses have to call on the phone, and the doctor is so far away from that hospital. Might be in town when they should be in Sandy Point or Molyneux. They're not supposed to be. If you're on call, you're on call. You have to be on the ready. Anything could happen. Not that you're in some garden somewhere and you got to quickly take a bath and do this. That's sufficient time for somebody to suffer and possibly die. You're on call, you're on call. We have sufficient doctors around here. A lot per capita. That every hospital, the 3 hospitals, can be properly manned with doctor stationed at the hospital. Nurses can only do that much and no more. There are reasons why they are nurses, and you are a doctor. There's a big gap in between. And most of the times, what you have is that persons, family members, go to the hospital, and you see nurses, some of them pleasant and nice, trying to assist you. But deep inside, there's a limitation. Whatever the nurse is going to say to you would not be absorbed with sufficient confidence compared to when a doctor might say something to you. So we must be mindful, and especially at our hospitals where we don't have the nurses, them specializing in areas. I heard Dr. Ju made mention of that they're going to try their best to have nurses specialized in various areas and work different departments. That is excellent. You're working in a department, I believe too that nurses now would have to make up their minds. Look, I want to be attached. You see, we can't be paternalistic about this, That's where the problem will come in. You cannot tell a nurse who is trying to work in the theater, that is her dream, and that is where she's willing to push her energy, invest her energy. And you're going to say, come go on the Cardigan home, specialize in caring for the elderly. Come go by this other department, specialize in that. No, you must have a discussion with that particular nurse and find out what area would you like to specialize in. You can't be totally paternalistic unless things would break down. You may say to somebody, look, we don't have full capacity, and we don't have even the extra person working in this department, specializing in this department, but we need persons in this other area. And then the post, matter of fact, nurses should have at least plan option A, B, C. So if A is already to capacity, they could go over to B. And if B is to capacity, they can confidently, in a non-disgruntled way, go over to C. But if you be paternalistic and tell them, you got to do that, and this nurse only has one area they're hoping to specialize in, don't care what you do. On the outside, that nurse might present a certain demeanor, and the inside, they're declaring war. And when you have a put on demeanor on the outside and the actuality on the inside, there would always be disgruntledness. The output would not be optimized. So have conversations with the nurses. Let them know what areas are needed and give them a choice. Give them a choice. Because, believe it or not, you have some persons who would like to go into nursing and would not want to work in a particular area, but then it seems as if when you would have completed certain things and you're getting ready for promotion and everything, part of the overall process is for you to go in almost every department to get a turn there, become an all-rounder. No, if I don't want to become an all-rounder, I don't want to become an all-rounder. Yes, certain basic stuff I should be able to carry out. But if I am the cricket team and I want to be an opening bat, I don't mind going down number 3. But you can't put me down number 6 because maybe I can't bat the spin as well as I could bat the pace. So I trying to avoid spin bowling. We had a lot of opening bats around here who just couldn't bat spin. I could remember Luther Kelly was trying to become more fair with the batting and spin. And at times he would just drop down to number 4 or 5. Because he didn't want, when we go to Nevis or Nevis came down, that Willett and Parry had them baffled. That is part of setting up yourself. So I'm appealing to the authorities, do not become overly paternalistic and dictate what areas people should go into. You could suggest and even explain to them the benefit of this, benefit of that. And please, we have to look at some people blame nurses for a lot of stuff. We got to be a little more compassionate. We have to be a little more compassionate. And the reason is, people who work shift, they got something they call the circadian clock, rhythm. Your body develop a particular type of rhythm. And when your shift changes, that clock is disturbed. And it's a clock, but it is a clock representing many clocks inside of the body. But it is manifested in this main clock. When your shift changes, so let us suppose you're working from 7 to 2, for almost 2 months, 3 months. And then you go work 7 to 2 the last day. You might get a day off, or then you might have to come back and work from 10 to 7. And it's very same day when you finish working at 2. You're not supposed to be, once you manage things properly, you're supposed to get a break. But even if you were to get a break in order to facilitate your shift, your body clock would have been tremendously disturbed. And matter of fact, that is the area that I wanted to do my dissertation in. That insufficient sleep would dangerously damage the brain. And persons who work shift and would have to come off of one and onto the next and not get sufficient rest, the brain can be terribly impacted. You don't want nurses with tired brain looking after anybody by any hospital, because there's a possibility of making mistakes, giving Suzette's medication judgment. Supposed to get medication at 12:30. And because you're dead sleepy and tired, 3 o'clock comes and you never did give the patient the medication because your body tired, your brain tired. We have to be very careful how we are going to design the shift system so that you do not overextend nurses. If they're going to work, they can work with a tired brain. It is nice to work with a brain that is challenged, but deprived of oxygen and being considerably overwhelmed is a recipe for disaster. You could talk to some nurses, and if some of them have consciences, they will tell you that they don't give people wrong medication already. You're tired. Sometimes you talk to somebody who was in the hospital and they say that they're crying, screaming for nurses and they're not coming. Sometimes the nurses not coming because they can't come. They're dead tired. Maybe they're napping it out. We have to be a little more compassionate towards the nurses. Let them have a say in the way you want to structure your shift system. Ensure, once you have sufficient staff, nursing, you ensure that the staff, the nurse, gets sufficient rest. Ensure that they get sufficient rest. I heard about 12-hour shift system. I don't know. I know something called diminishing returns. I know you have a tension problem the longer the duration of time. Some people could concentrate for a long period of time and some cannot. One time a lady, she brought her daughter and she said she can't even study for an hour. And she understands that they're putting some good hours studying. I would study from 6 Saturday evening until 6 Sunday morning. Because I'm accustomed of doing that. Some people they study from 6, by 7:30, they're packing up. If you're not accustomed to it, it will take some time. So we have to be very mindful that that is key. So it's a very delicate equilibrium to establish. And as much as you're in an authoritative position, you must have consideration for your subordinates. I saw some nurses got promoted wearing the red belt. I would like to say congratulations to all of them. Well deserving. Because I know the struggle some of them would have gone through. You had persons graduating from the CFBC and UWI with a nursing degree. And then when they went to take the regional exam, they were failing. It used to be 3 attempts, and somehow provisions were made to allow them to do it a 4th time. Some of them would have gotten the pass after 4 attempts. And it's not easy. I would have been in a position to look and see what this exam consisted of. And what I found amazing, and I think I would have spoken to Machen daily at one time, why our nurses are graduating with degrees from Clarence Fitzroy Boyan College, and when they go to take the regional exam, they are continually failing. Is it such a great differentiation in the various syllabuses? Because if you just come out fresh with a degree, why you failing the regional exam? What is the content difference on the syllabus down at CFBC and the one for the regional exam? You had persons who done with nursing because they just couldn't pass the regional exam. And you had persons who hang on in a frustrating manner, who had to make so many attempts. You saw them there in the nice white and the red belt and the little thing on the left shoulder and everything looking nice. But some of us, we see the results, but we just didn't understand the journey. We had no idea those nurses had to go through. Mind you, had some who just simply did what they had to do in one shot. People have different learning capacity and ability. And I was rather happy to hear that we are trying to get a hospital that is accredited. Now, there are certain ramifications for that, because once you get accredited, the accreditation body would be carrying out checks on you on a regular basis. There's always a possibility of you losing your accreditation if the performances within that environment is not up to scratch. So we must take our time, structure what we have to structure. Don't structure something that you can't maintain. It's all about maintaining. You become accredited. There are certain things that you have to follow. The quality of the output would have to be high at a particular degree. And you would have to sustain this for a period of time. And you have to do it in a recurring fashion. Not that the people come to inspect and you nice up the place and then they ain't coming back before the next 6 months. So you lapse. But then they drop in on you 4 months at the 4-month interval and catch you off guard. You're supposed to be consistently high when you're going for accreditation. And there are some benefits to be had by having an accredited hospital. An accredited hospital. Because we have something you call health tourism. People can actually travel to St. Kitts to get medical treatment. The hospital, once accredited, would have a certain quality service, certain quality output, certain quality customer service. I heard that being mentioned very recently. You have to work on these. Some people like to take their personal situations on the job. But you know, me not like at all. What the hell I got to do on the job? What I got to do on the job? You should be saying where the person getting gyps and the weight of the gyps supposed to be XYZ. Somebody observe it is not XYZ. And then you realize there might be in a clog. So therefore you go and assist, take out the thing, make sure that it is flowing at the particular frequency weight that is supposed to be flowing. And you assist. Not, like a talk shows over this trip, getting on this and that, and so dancing with somebody, man, and them kind of things at our hospital amongst our nurses should never be. Those personal things should be set aside. You and somebody cannot get on personally. Leave it. Your job is to make sure you be professional on the job. Because a lot of gossiping would take place in nursing. There's always that time down where some conversation would have to take place. Do something. If you specialize, you get time to read a book, see certain application, watch certain videos. Come and say, watch this. The scientist just caused a rat to have 2 fathers. And that was a recent experiment. That is a fact. A rat has 2 fathers. So you can bring that to the human environment, where a human being can end up having 2 fathers. Those are things that people should be willing to read about. You're in an area, now you specialize, you try to see how much you can learn, how much as possible you can learn. Gossip mongering just got to be decreased considerably, because something that is half the issue. You would sit there with two other person and you gossip, and you bang somebody's name, bang their reputation, bang their character. And then one of you would go back to the individual and say, and then you are supposed to be in the same working environment. But how that gonna work, man? You're putting people's life at risk. Because you're gonna be looking forever for mistakes. You're gonna be looking forever to put under pressure persons who you're not getting on. And if the person is under your managerial effort, you would even make an effort to pressure that person into submission. You want to see water come out their eyes. They should go look after that patient. They should go look after that patient. We had a situation now at the carrying home where the guys them down there supposed to be helping to turn patients and so in order to get them bathed and everything. And sometimes one nurse down there turning 40 people and then bawling for her back. But she's so passionate about her work that she just couldn't say, well, nobody helping me turn. Well, me ain't dealing with no bat this morning for this because nobody here to help me. The natural instinct is to give the people them the bat. Then you complain. But if you complain consistently, and the orderly them who's supposed to be offering you assistance or whoever supposed not coming around, you can't strain out your back. A back strain is something that lasts for a very, very long time. And sometimes your vertebral column come out of alignment. You might be surprised that you have to go like athletes often should do, is go and realign your back. When you got to be moving these patients by yourself, it's not easy. And nobody could imagine somebody working a 12-hour shift. And as soon as your shift's supposed to over, you say to the person, well, for whatever calculated reason the person was supposed to be, you ain't gonna say that, but I'm saying that some calculated reason, this person ain't coming in. Maybe they got a party to go somewhere, maybe they do this, maybe they got to go with news, they do whatever. They ask you to double up the shift, maybe backside. But who could double up 12 hours? 12 hour double up is a whole day. 12-hour double up is a whole day, so we got to be very, very careful. You had persons working from 7 to 10, or 10 to 7. You work out that hour duration there, the hourly duration, and you could ask somebody there to double up, but they could still be tired. Because from 10 to 7, 10 until 12, 12 to 7 is another 7 hours. So that's about, I don't know if it's a 9-hour session, whatever break they have in between. You go work 10 in the night, you finish 7 in the morning. So you go up to 12 o'clock midnight and you come back around 7. So that's 9. Somebody might be able to work 18 hours. But when you ask somebody on a 12-hour shift to double up due to the unavoidable absence of your co-worker, you're asked to double up your duty. But who could really double up like that? A mother, imagine you have a mother who has to multitask when she in home, single parent home, don't exhaust herself. You're telling me double up a 12-hour shift? But a lot of things got to be considered, a lot of factors. Plenty factors will have to be taken into consideration. Not so easy. We have to be more appreciative. And that is why people must be paid handsomely. A sacrifice, but sometimes don't care how much you pay somebody. It is just a physical impossibility for them to go further. Tiredness. And when your brain tired, it's different to your body being tired. Your brain is the engine room of your overall being. You can't ask a tired brain nurse to double up. You can't ask a tired brain. You could ask a tired body to do something. A tired brain nurse cannot double up and got people's life at stake. We could say whatever we want. You could compensate them however you want. But once that brain is overwhelmed, I think maybe they should carry out a pilot project. But then if you're taking a pilot project, your sample size, somebody might just endure for the sake that it is a pilot project. And the pilot project might not be able to be transformed into the overall general population and effort. People gonna know whether choose this to be the pilot project, these 10 nurses, whatever. But everybody is unique. Everybody is unique. Maybe they have some persons who got family issues. And even when they're on the job, they have to get telephone calls from home, your son this, your daughter this. Those persons might prefer to work a day shift. And if you force them to work a shift other than the shift that would best accommodate their living conditions, family conditions, you might not be getting maximum output from that person. I don't even know if you might have to reach a case where cell phones are left in a particular area, because sometimes you're surprised you go places and the hospital is no exception, and you're trying to get service and somebody either finishing up a messaging conversation, finishing up watching a movie, taking a call, and you have somebody there waiting until they would have achieved their goals, and then they come and pay attention to you. I don't want people to feel, well, Nital is being harsh. How could you even give a clue that nurses should leave their cell phone in a particular area while they're at work? That can be done. And then at a convenient juncture, you could be allowed to check your phone to see if you had any emergency calls from your home. But you cannot be with your phone throughout duty. These cell phones, they're addictive, you know. They're addictive. How many pots already burnt while people at home and they're on their phone not paying attention to what's going on in the kitchen? If pots can burn in homes, well, wrong medication can be given. Attention can be given out of time. All those are possibilities. There are real probability that these things can happen. These things can happen. So we have to be mindful that whatever package we put together, it can be managed by the average performing nurse. They're like multiple choices. Why you think they got multiple choices for over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and 80% of the questions them coming back? Multiple choices are not easy to put together. For you to put a series of new multiple choices in a particular area of study, they would have to do a pilot project. They said they want to put in these 10 questions. Let us get some average student to do these questions, because multiple choice is supposed to be like a minute and a half. You get 60 multiple choice to do in an hour. That's a minute and a half per multiple choice. You must get some people to carry out these trials for the multiple choices. And if favorable, then you can include whichever ones they finish on time. If it took 3, 4, 5 minutes for the 90% of them to finish, you know that's a difficult question to put on a multiple choice. And that is why they do not allow you to get the multiple choice papers after exam, because most of these questions would come back. If you do about 5 years multiple choice, you could bet your life that there's a common denominator of questions coming back. And sometimes some persons, when they study, sometimes they don't even understand what the question asking, but they know they see this question and the answer was that. And they just sit you question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. So even when they might have gotten 50, 55 out of 60, they don't have a clue about the concepts that were actually covered in those 60 multiple choice. They're just regurgitating, they learn it and they just put it back out. Let us take a break and we'll be back.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear nor favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM. Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear nor favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Welcome back to Fear Nor Favor. Now, some persons are of the opinion that those in authority, they don't care about the services at the hospital. And their thing is that they have the money to pack up and go overseas for medical attention. But we have to be careful with those sort of irresponsible statements, very superficial statements, and embryonic statements. You cannot decide that persons would let a health institution run away because they have money to go overseas. That is not so true, because not all the time you will get time to go overseas. Something could happen now. How you going to get the flight booked? Don't care what money you have. You would have to go, you may have to go to the hospital to be given some preliminary medical treatment. You might have to go there to be stabilized before you can fly out. So don't care how much money in your bank account. There are times when you have sufficient time, yes, you can take your time and get your referral and go for your advanced medical treatment. And there are other times when time is the issue, not money. A lot of people would have passed away with a lot of money in their pocket because they didn't get the opportunity, the time to go and seek so to speak, advanced medical treatment. I think that we would have come quite a long, long way with respect to our healthcare facilities. And the only issue, or the predominant issue, that was diluting and masking that advancement was customer service. And we have to be careful. Some people are very calculating in attempting to give persons in authority bad names or making them look bad. We have two sets of persons, or let us say three sets, with respect to putting out work from the government perspective. You have those who do not support the government, but working within government and would like to see them in bad light. We have those who support the government, and because they support the government, they do not do what they're supposed to do, because they would not be dismissed, they would not be terminated, but they are performing below par and something not performing at all. And they feel once they could go back to a politician and say, well, Peter said that, or Jane said that, that is sufficient to overlook the fact that they're not contributing anything to the gross domestic product by way of service. That is a culture that we have to done with. That is a culture we have to done with. Politicians got to stop embrace those things. Yes, you might put somebody to look out and be your eyes and ears. But if that person is not performing and all they're doing is that their duty has now been totally transformed into being eyes and ears and not carrying out the function and role they're supposed to carry out, but we can't continue along that line. Should never. People must do what they're supposed to do. Sometimes those same persons are the ones who make administrations look real bad, because they might consider what they're doing as key to the re-electability of politicians. Man, Lord, there's a time for politics and a time for St. There's a time for politics and there's a time for St. Your time should always be about St. When time for campaigning, and sometimes we get it wrong, you know. Sometimes we get it wrong. From the time the government stepped in August, they have already started to campaign. The work that they're doing, that's automatic campaigning. Judge me by my work. That is why opposing is so difficult. Yes, you might try to criticize or critique and do whatever. And sometimes you might distort facts. Sometimes you might fabricate stories. And then it will be left up to the voters to do what they have to do. But sometimes a politician who is just being distracted, they buy into it. So they got to go and respond. Just ignore that and do what you have to do. That is your campaign that you're on. The productivity, the output. That's natural campaigning. It must happen. And then at the end of the day, sometimes you could even pick up, by you put them to count in twos, and somebody said 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12. You must be able to accept that you are attempting to count in twos, and 7 shouldn't be part of it. Unless you started 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 20, and that sort of stuff. You must be able to say by the opposition or those who critiquing or even criticizing, they have a point. So let us look after that. If you're doing your best and things are said to make your best even better, Take it on board. Don't say because you come from a particular angle and a particular environment, you ain't taking it on. Because if you take it on and you add that to your best, that is bonus. That is bonus. At the end of the day now, time for campaigning and see if you can be re-elected. Your marks going to be high. But if you break every time, to take on distraction and distractors, what time would be left for you to do your work and accumulate good re-electability points? You cannot. Stay focused on what you're doing. If anything comes up that you can utilize, use it. They can't say, that's my idea. Well, you could advise and I decide. Advise, I gonna decide. You criticize, I gonna decide. So even if somebody comes up with a good point and you take it on board, is you do it. Is you did it. Don't care who come up with the idea. Once you embrace it and you carry it out to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, the credit is yours. Stop reacting to the detractors. What you have to do, listen to people who are critiquing your performances and your decision and your policy making and see if you can take the positive out of that. Even if you take it to this lowest level and we criticize, there is some substance to be had from even negative criticism. Even negative criticism. Enough of that. A lady stopped me in town today. I had reasons to go in the town around Church Street area. And she said, Nital, but I do not know her. And she said to me, you're doing an excellent job. We listen to you. We make decisions based on what you say. We make adjustments based on what you said. So don't think if you don't call in, we are not listening. And she called me. I turned back. And that made my day. I was actually leaving there to go to the hospital to visit a friend. And my mood was just filled with sprightliness. It was so nice. So you have a responsibility when you're hosting a show. You have to make sure that the content that you're putting out there, people can learn, people can make adjustment. It could be instructive, it could be informative. That is when you put the quality of your show to the test. Then when people would have met you and indicate that this is what is happening to their lives as a result of listening to you, that is the high that you would get. You know, man, 470 different chemicals up in your head from smoking. Those are the highs that you would get. Now, let me go back. I have a few more minutes. Let me go back. I said I was going to talk about the court system. They have a new thing they call paper committal. Instead of having the PI, the preliminary investigations, everything, you got paper PI, committal. You have some lawyers telling you they never do it yet. Some people working on the prosecution team, they never do it that, so they want more time. And every minute they're asking for more time. If you know that you're going into a system and the system would be engineered in this particular way, you got to go in ready. Not when the magistrate sets a date, you're begging for more time, and when they ask the reason, you're saying that you never did one before. Well, but if it was a PI, you would have had to do a similar preparation. All they're asking of you is to take the things, put them on paper, submit them, your bundle, to the magistrate for them to decide. So this kind of thing about I never did one yet. Man, the court should not be held up because sometimes people's lives become a standstill as a result of lack of forward movement in the court. And you know what is ridiculous too? The police got to bring up their side. You bring charges against somebody. The fact that you brought charges would indicate that you would have done your investigation or very close to completing your investigation for you to bring the charge. Because you got to know what charges, what evidence you have, and the charges will be based on the evidence, not information. There's a difference between information and evidence. If the charges are based on evidence and you formulated your evidence to charge a person, why when you go down the court, you still do not have a completed file? Why when you go down the court and the magistrate set a deadline for disclosure, you're falling short all the time? So where you got the information to pick out the evidence from to charge a person? And it is frustrating, very, very frustrating. I think it got so bad that somebody was charged for allegedly committing a murder. And the disclosure wasn't forthcoming. I could imagine the magistrate had to become not frustrated, but use wisdom and say, look, we're going to choke this. We're going to choke this. Choke a case where somebody allegedly committed murder. Choke out a case. Your conscience would not disturb you when such a thing happened. But luckily, the law provides for, even if you choke something like that, you can have the person rearrested and charged. Luckily. But we cannot be frustrating defendants, especially, by having the disclosure date set by the magistrate. Put off once, put off twice, put off 3 times, but this ain't a dolly house. That's a courthouse, not a dolly house. Why can't you meet the deadlines stipulated by the magistrate for disclosure especially? The defendant would like to know what he or she has to do to counter the disclosure that you brought. You have to bring it. It is so frustrating, man. Our court system is not bad, but we could do much better. And the police, them who working and supplying the DPP's office with files, and the DPP eventually would get the disclosure out. Sometimes maybe there's a discrepancy as to who's supposed to provide the disclosure. It is by law the DPP, but maybe in the past you might have had police providing that, and then you just got a little confusion or perplexity as to who really is supposed to provide it. And that is where the problem would be. Because they used to have confidence in the police that once they do that, they could just quickly do that, provide the disclosure. But no, the police realize, well, that's the work of the DPP, let them do what they have to do. So there's still a gray area that needs to be placed into distinct shades of black and white. Who's supposed to do what? And I think there's no dishonor in admitting that you might have a little problem putting some and ask for help. Your counsel, you're doing this, you're doing that. You encounter a problem, ask for help. Don't frustrate the court because you are absorbing your ignorance of a particular area. And then you have to ask for time and time and time. One time they got people got big up and time garden up, they go look some season your pot. You can be frustrating people in not meeting the deadline for disclosure. And not just once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Can't be acceptable. Now we have some youngsters going off to Kawifta. They went through a period of trials recently. What was rather disheartening for me is that Basia High School, the home of champions, they had a sports day. And they did not utilize the electronic system to do the timing. Because apparently it is something that you have to pay for. All the other schools used the electronic system, those who went to Kim Collins Stadium. And you want to tell me that Basia High, the mighty high school, no money was there to use the electronic system. So the people have got some hand times that cannot be even translated into anything to see that the athletes would go forward. Man, that is distasteful. How could you not have the proper timing system? Other schools, Washi them had it. Man, we're falling back. We are falling back. As a matter of fact, if the government money that they budgeted for education, the question must be asked, when the monies were budgeted for education, is there an allotment therein for sports? You have to ask a question. And if there's money for sports, where the money going? Where that money is going? I understand, well, Basia High might have had a cocktail, whatever, they had to raise funds. I don't know what they do when they raise funds, what they put the money towards. I don't know if it goes towards helping out the athletes for the inter-school championship. I don't know what they do with it. But I'm saying that at that particular period of time when they had the sports there, they ought to have had the electronic timer. So parents who are anticipating that their child would advance to the Carifta meet, they could have had a better indication as to how close that child may have been. It was a disappointment. Major, major disappointment. You have inter-school, you have people coming on from Nevis, and they would have to say some place. You have some schools here who might want to put the runners, the athletes, in a particular environment together in order to foster and nurture the chemistry that is needed. But maybe they can't. When you have children coming from different homes, the chemistry that they can achieve is quite different to the one that they could have accomplished had they been staying in a single environment. So if you know that is the case and you truly have track and field as a passionate sport, you're passionate about it as a person being in charge, you got to raise funds. You get money from the government would help. But I think that should be a major aspect. That should be a major aspect of the government effort in providing a little allowance to facilitate the inter-school. Inter-school is the biggest thing we have. Bigger than our national championship. All the schools come out. They come out in their colors, everything. And no child should be running barefooted up there. Absolutely no child. Allowances would have to be given to schools. And I believe when you don't make up your list of athletes, maybe they should be training in the track shoes all the time. Prior to, because you can't get a pair of track shoes and run comfortably in them on the same day. You have to be a master at this thing. We should make ample provision to ensure that our young athletes, and there is an appeal that when these people leave secondary school, there must be some degree of continuity, because we lose them between that age, finishing high school and going into adulthood. From joining a track club, coaches are now charging. And of course, a man can get up out of bed 4:30 and so to accommodate athletes who are training and do not get some kind of compensation. So something the athletes themselves, the parents don't want to make the contribution to the coach. But coaches would not go on doing that forever. when they have to be making sacrifices. Some kind of supplemental allowance should be placed for those who would have to go on to be coached by others. Sometimes the students outgrow the coaches they have at the school. Sometimes the coaches they have at the school might be a level 5 and reasonable, but sometimes a school has no level 5 and some provision must be made to send them students or athletes to level 5 or whoever they could get the coaching from. Well, we have come to the end of the program. There are quite a number of things I would have liked to really touch on, but it is time, and then next week we will have our good doctor, Dr. Natalie Osborne, our general surgeon, one of our 2 general surgeons at the hospital. So thank you for listening. I saw a few WhatsApp coming in, and this discussion would continue. And like the lady said, they listen. It is instructive, informative, and they act upon many things that I would have suggested. I'm very happy to hear that. Have a pleasant night, and do have a restful one as well to face yet another day tomorrow. Thank you.
The opinions and statements made by the host and participants in this program are not